Hey everybody, and welcome to Hired or Fired, the show where I take a close look at a game to see if it's worthy of a place on your shelf or not. Today we're looking at Colosseum by Wolfgang Kramer and Markus Lübke. The game was originally released in 2007 by Days of Wonder, but was more recently released by Tasty Minstrel Games. This is the version I have here. Colosseum is for 3 to 5 players and plays in around an hour to an hour and a half. So the idea of the game is that each player has their own amphitheatre, and they are all trying to put on as best show as possible in order to attract spectators. Whoever has attracted the most spectators after 5 rounds will be declared the winner. So let's take a look at some of the mechanics involved in Colosseum. So the main kind of driving force behind the game is set collection. Because each show you have to put on, you require a number of resources, such as gladiators or horses and chariots. So the easier shows, which obviously grant you less points than the more difficult shows, require less resources, and the more difficult shows require a lot more. So the main way you're going to gather your cast and crew of your shows is going to be through a series of auctions. Now, I happen to be a big fan of auctions in gaming, so naturally I was happy to find this out. But what makes the auctions more interesting in Colosseum than a lot of other games is that you buy things in lots of 3. So say for example I really wanted some gladiators, but the only lot up there was maybe 2 gladiators and a horse, and I might not be remotely interested in horses. So it's really interesting that you might have to bid on lots that you're not so interested in order to get the things that you are interested in. Another way to gather resources and to make use of the resources that you gained that you're not so interested in is to trade them in the trading round. Now there's a specific round designed for this where you have to negotiate and trade your goods or money in order to get the things you want, and people might get what they want. Now I really like the way that this works in Colosseum, but the rules do say that the trading round is supposed to be kind of resolved in a certain order, by one player kind of doing all their trades at once and then the next player doing their trades. But personally, I would recommend to kind of scrap that idea and just to give players a complete kind of free forum to do what they want. Because when everyone's trading at the same time, you can really kind of string together a lot of deals. So like certain deals might depend on the other deals other people are making. And it just makes for a lot more interesting round than what the game actually suggests itself. But this is a really cool mechanic in the game, and I do really like the way that you can be really creative and come up with some really cool deals. I do think it's important that players do not kind of discuss anything, any potential trades outside of the trading round, because it can really damage the fun of the auction round. So that is a bit of an issue, because say for example I was really interested in an auction lot because of a certain tile, but somebody else had their eye on that lot as well. And I say to them, well, if you let me have it for dirt cheap, I will give you the bit you want that I'm not interested in for very cheap too. So that can really hinder the kind of the way that the auctions scale, so everybody's kind of paying minimum prices, and I think that really damages the fun of the game. Now I will say it's a very, very easy rule fix, just say that you can't discuss trades outside of the trading round. But I'm surprised that the rulebook didn't actually address this. So that's just a little small thought that I think could be improved. In addition to the set collection, the auctions and the negotiation, there's also some roll and move involved in Colosseum. And this is kind of portrayed through the movement of these nobles. So basically everybody's going to roll a dice and move nobles around the board in a clockwise manner. Now if those nobles land within your amphitheatre, then you are granted a certain level of additional spectators. But not only can you move them into your arena, you can choose to move them out of other people's arenas. So not only can you help yourself, but you can also hurt others. It's also important because you can actually land these nobles on certain spots on the board which grant you Emperor's medals. And these Emperor's medals are really useful and versatile in your strategy and also for tactical decisions, because they can be traded in for money. You can trade them in for and store them. In fact, you can store up a number of them and then trade them in for additional spectators. And you can also use them to further manipulate the nobles. because as I said earlier, you can normally only move them clockwise around the board. But if you spend one of those Emperor's medals, then you can move them back counterclockwise and move them back into your arena. So it's really interesting how those Emperor's medals are used throughout the game. Now, I guess from kind of on paper, those mechanics do seem a bit jarring. You know, you've got the set collection, you've got the auction, you've got the negotiation, and even the roll and move. But I have to say, those do come together very nicely because each phase kind of resolves in its own right. So basically, phase 1 is like an investment phase where you kind of plan your potential strategies. Phase 2 is the auctions. Phase 3 is the negotiation. And phase 4 is a kind of roll and move and then you count your spectators. And then phase 5 is where you kind of do a bit of a cleanup. But so they all do come together very, very nicely. And because all those phases are so kind of individualized, the game is actually very, very easy to teach and not kind of overwhelming in the slightest. Now, what interests me most about Colosseum is the fact that you are forced to think long term. At least if you want to do well. Just winging it is going to prove disastrous. You really do have to start building towards your final show from the get-go. But you can't completely neglect your current year's show because you need those shows in order to make the money, to make the investments, and also to win the podiums, which will grant you permanent spectators. So everything is very well balanced in that respect because you're forced to think long term, but you can't neglect the current. And I love that about the game. The 5 rounds or years provide a really tight time frame in order for you to execute your plan. And if you make one bad investment or miscalculate your investments, then your plan can go completely down the toilet. But equally, it's so rewarding when your meticulous plan does pay off. After each show you put on, you have to discard one of the resources that were used in that show. And that decision can prove very, very difficult because it can completely mess up all your future plans if you get that wrong. So even that kind of tiny decision can prove very, very significant to your long-term success in the game. It's also really important to consider the risk and reward by putting on those bigger shows because those shows that offer the most points are really difficult to assemble, to gather all the different parts you need. So sometimes it's better to kind of go for the smaller shows and try and boost up your spectators by investing in season tickets or maybe buying the Emperor's Lodge in order to move more nobles into your arena. So it's interesting to know that you can kind of go different routes by playing it a bit safer but going for heavy investments, or taking a huge gamble by going for those absolutely enormous shows. I also think that good negotiation skills go a long way in Colosseum, because if you're good at pulling those strings in order to get what you want, that can be the difference between winning and losing. But not only have you got to try and get what you want, you've got to be careful not to give other players the tiles that they want. So you've got to be really kind of on the ball in that respect and be careful not to grant other players loads of points. Even deciding how to move the nobles can present some really difficult decisions because not only have you got to think about moving nobles into your arena, which will grant you additional spectators, but doing so might leave even more powerful nobles in other people's arenas. So you might want to move them out of their arenas so they don't get such a bonus. But in addition to moving nobles in and out of your arenas, you have to worry about Emperor's medals because those medals are so versatile and can help a lot during the game. They can give you additional money for the auction rounds. They can even provide you the ability to make additional investments, which is so important because you might have miscalculated your investment phases and not been able to get the show you want, or you might need that extra kick of selling a season ticket. So there are so many decisions to make, even in just that roll and move round. Calculating your score each round can seem pretty mathy at first because there are so many different contributing factors that change your score. But once you get a head around it, it's really not too bad. And I absolutely love the scoring system in this game because it's not like a cumulative score like in most games, where your previous round is added to your last round. only your best show is going to matter in this game. So you could do really poorly the whole game through and then score a massive whopping score in the 5th round and do pretty well. So I absolutely love that, and I like games that kind of introduce new ways of scoring. And I think that makes Colosseum really different. It's also really cool to kind of see, well, the game kind of has a really cool kind of cadence to it, because each round you kind of see your spectators slowly creep up, or at least if you're playing well. So I love that fact about Colosseum. Let's talk about the balance of Colosseum. Now, personally, I have no issues with this game's balance at all. I think everybody has a fair shot of winning, and the best player will always win. Now, I guess sometimes the auction round can kind of leave a load of tiles up there that you're not interested in, and then you kind of missed out on a whole turn, and you don't really have many options. So the luck of the draw can kind of play a factor in that respect, especially if nobody wants to trade with you. But I do really like the catch-up mechanic in this game, because at the end of each round, players, or the player in the worst position is going to take a tile of their choice from the player in the best position. And that really can help the player behind a lot, but it forces the player in front to really kind of, puts them under pressure, because they have to get the tiles they want back, and it can kind of divert their kind of game plan a bit. And I love that, and it does seem to balance the game really well. In regards to teaching the game to new players, I think Colosseum is great. Because, as I said earlier, the game is divided into very kind of distinct phases. And teaching those phases one at a time is so simple, because, you know, one phase is an auction phase, one phase is a negotiation phase, one phase, you know, is a, where you calculate your score. It's very easy to break up the way you teach this game. So the mechanics of the game themselves are really simple, but the strategy is where the kind of difficulty lies. And to me, it's important that a game delivers that. Newer players will make mistakes in this, but it's not because of the rules. It's because of their kind of lack of experience in planning the way that the game works. And I have to say, the rulebook as well is really good with this game. So clear and easy to understand. So definitely 2 thumbs up for the rulebook. So let's talk about replayability. So because of the large number of shows, the different starting tiles and the different starting shows, there is a really good level of replayability with Colosseum. Also, the players themselves add a lot of kind of replayability to the game, because the negotiation round is such a kind of free forum to do what you want. So the different personalities are going to have a massive effect on the way that the game plays out. So even just by introducing a new player or two, you're going to get a completely different dynamic and feel of the game. Now, that being said, there is no expansion for this game. So I guess after several plays, maybe some players will kind of figure out a kind of method that they stick to, and then each game can kind of become a bit formulaic. But it's never going to be, a cut and paste kind of game, because every time you're going to get different tiles, and you're going to get a different player on top, so they're going to, have tiles stolen off them, etc. But it's just something that I'm kind of speculating about, and I can kind of foresee maybe people following the same game plan every time they play it. Colosseum does, however, really give you that feeling of wanting to beat your previous score, and that kind of addictiveness does add a lot to the replayability, and for me is generally a staple of a good game. So in that respect, Colosseum does a really good job. Now, the level of player interaction in Colosseum is really impressive. And I'm personally a huge fan of auctions within board games, because the level of interaction that comes with that is great. Not only by trying to outbid them on certain lots, but even by kind of just bidding in order to run up the prices is always good fun. The trading round has infinite potential, because it really does go as far as the players want to go. If you've got those real kind of extroverted characters who want to make really extravagant and complex deals, then the game can do that, and I absolutely love that. Maybe kind of more introverted players aren't going to get so involved in that kind of aspect of the game, but that's no fault of the games. It does give you the platform to do it. That being said, as I said earlier, I would recommend that you do ignore the rules in respect to one player trading at a time, and just let players have a free-for-all, because the level of interaction really is heightened. And I also like, for the most part, players are just trying to help themselves and put on as best show as possible. So there's no real kind of destructive take that or nastiness, which is great. Colosseum plays out in a relatively succinct amount of time. The box says 60 to 90 minutes, and in my experience, that's very accurate. There's very little downtime involved in the game because, for the most part, all players are going to be involved in the auctions, in the negotiation round. So there's really is very, very little downtime. The only thing I would suggest, especially if you have particularly stubborn players, is to put a time limit on the trading phase. Because if people just want to keep going and going and going until they get what they want, then the game can have the potential to drag. Which is probably why they suggest one player trading at a time. But again, if you just put a time limit on the round, then you can stay within the in the time parameter of the game, and it definitely won't outstay its welcome. So let's talk about the theme of the game. So personally, I'm a huge fan of the actual concept of the game, and I think the mechanics do fit the theme of the game very well. Because you really do feel like a show organizer under pressure to put on as best show as possible within a restricted time frame. And to me, that's what theme is all about. I really like how all the shows thematically make sense. For example, Legendary Lion Hunters required you to collect lions and gladiators and cages. Yes, Colosseum is essentially a Eurogame, but to me, pretty much everything in the game thematically makes sense. From star performers to scoring less by putting on repeat shows, and even by having to discard a tile through wear and tear as you put on the shows. And even the emperors influencing the number of spectators you have in your show. To me, everything does tie up pretty well. So let's take a look at some of the components here. Now I have to say, overall, the component quality is absolutely outstanding. So we've got the show tiles here. These are really clear, super thick cardboard, and they just feel really good quality. So those are the big shows. You've got the second biggest shows there. You've got the wooden pieces, such as podiums and Emperor's Lodges. You've got the season tickets here, which are nice chunky bits of wood that you can add onto your arena. The modular arenas are really cool. They look great, fit together really nicely. Again, super thick cardboard. Just everything is such good quality. You've got the star performers here. They look really cool. Even you've got the first player marker. Everything's so thematically well done. Even the dice have Roman numerals on them. You've got the nobles here, which are really nice, and you get a number of different stickers as well, so if you want them to look different. But I like them like this, good thick wood components. You've got the Emperor's medals here, which again, they look great, nice thick cardboard again. Even the score markers are Roman podiums, wooden pieces, just look really good. They just look the part. But most impressively is the actual money in this game. The money is metal. Proper, thick, decent quality metal, and it's just unbelievable quality, the level of detail they've gone in and the effort they've put in to make all these components top quality. I didn't mention this bag as well that holds all the resource tiles. So the tiles again are really thick, and you get this amazing silk bag, which again, it just feels amazing quality and looks fantastic. And finally, let's take a look at the board itself. So it's super big. Well, I say it's super big. It's not overly big, but it's a really good size. Ultra thick cardboard again, probably the thickest board I've ever seen. Everything fits together really nicely. So you've got the noble track that goes around the side here, where everybody's amphitheaters are. You've got the central section where you keep all the auction tiles, where you bid on the different lots. I just really like the look of this board. It kind of has this really cool cartoony look to it, which I've heard some people criticize because they preferred the Days of Wonder version, but I personally think this one is just as good. I really love the look of it. Really clear, really good looking, bright colors, and I actually can't fault this at all. So overall, Colosseum is a very fun game and really easy to learn and teach, but still offers a ton of strategy, interaction, and amazing components in a very succinct amount of time. If you enjoy auctions and negotiation, but still want a solid game to go alongside that, then Colosseum really is the game for you. Colosseum is not only family friendly, but it's also gamer friendly, and it's a game that has so much to offer across the board. Not only does it look fantastic, but it also is a great game. For all these reasons, I highly recommend Colosseum. It really is that good. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video and it's been of use to you. If it has, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. For everyone else, I will see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.